Okay, let's talk draft. And as always, the resources I use for the draft, Hoop Intellect on YouTube, Sam Vecini at The Athletic, Jonathan Wasserman Bleacher Report, Jonathan Gavoni ESPN, Ringer Draft Guide, No Ceilings. It seems like at this point, Reese Shea is the most popular guy to mock for the Hawks at number 1. And it's crazy because like a month ago, Alex Sarr was the consensus number 1 guy. But pretty much everything is connecting Sarr to the Wizards at this point, and he hasn't worked out for Atlanta, stuff like that. And for Atlanta, who obviously have this DeJounte Trey thing looming over them, where if a move happens, I think it's going to be DeJounte. I think Trey will stay on the Hawks. But also their defense was really bad this previous season. Sarr is viewed as this potentially great defensive player who's super versatile as a big, who can play high on screens, he can switch, he can drop, protect the rim, the whole thing. He does like all of it really well. Whereas Reese Shea can be more of like a good team defender on the wing spot. And then obviously the idea there is Reese Shea can be a shot maker at the wing spot, whereas with Sarr, the offense is going to be like a little more of a process. Even if he's shown some signs as like a shooter, although his percentages have not been great, but he's been willing to take him, and he shoots in like the high 20s on threes right now as a big, whereas Reese Shea is probably a safer bet from outside. And I mean, describing Reese Shea, he can fit pretty much anywhere, but especially on a team where if it's, I think it's going to be Trey, so I'll just say Trey. Creating shots for him, able to get corner threes, wing threes, he can cut, he can attack off the catch, although the shot creation stuff is going to have to come more in time if it does for him like that. Like, I see the vision of somebody like a Reese Shea going to Atlanta as a big wing who can make shots and do other things. It's just with Sarr, there is a world in which Alex Sarr is the centerpiece of a really good defense, which Atlanta is in desperate need of, and I understand that Okongwu and Capella are there, but like, whatever, if you think Sarr's the guy, then he's the guy. And then just having that big who can have shots created for him by Trae Young. We know what that looks like. Now with Sarr, yes, he needs to put on more weight to be, the best screen setter he can be and deal with the most physicality he can around the rim. And again, the jump shot we will see in time. And there's also been some noise that he potentially might want to have the ball in his hands more than I think what some NBA teams envisioned for him. And obviously Trae Young has the ball a lot. Now, if you think Trae Young is just not going to be on the Hawks in, 3 years, then this can change some things. And I get it. They got Jalen Johnson already. If you think that potentially makes the front court crowded or whatever, Alex Sarr with Trae Young just sounds really good to me. Not that Reese Shea and Trae Young doesn't sound good, but I don't know. They both look good. And there's a chance that Reese Shea becomes like one of the best shooters in the league. Now, while I don't think this is going to happen, I can't ignore that there is still this little bit of Hawks potentially trading down for Klingon thing. Again, I don't think it's going to happen. I will talk about Klingon later in the video because he is a really good rim protector. To talk about the Wizards, it would be very surprising for them to pass up on whoever the Hawks do not take between Reese Shea and Sarr, most likely again. Just going off of all the mocks here. Maybe this will all be very wrong, I don't know. For the Wizards, if it ends up being Alex Sarr, number 2 for them, then I think defensively with him, Coulibaly, and Denny, you do have something that could be pretty legit in time. Coulibaly, he's got the over 7-foot wingspan. He was almost at a steal and a block per game. The signs with him defensively are all there. We all know how good Denny is defensively. Sarr projects to be like an all-defense guy in time with his size and mobility. Now, if they do go with Sarr, the Wizards, then in time they're going to need to still find like a great creator for everybody to lead the offense. We like Tyus Jones, but ideally he's your backup. And Poole and Kuzma, they're Poole and Kuzma. Now, if one of Sarr or Reese Shea falls out of the top 2, then okay, this whole thing goes a little more out of whack. Because now for the Rockets at number 3, it seems like the consensus is either they want to trade it, and the most popular guy to imagine for them trading has been Mikal Bridges for the last however many months, but the Nets just don't seem to be budging there. Or everybody's got them taking Reed Shepherd, who's a pretty strong all-around player. He's not the biggest guard in the world, but he fights like hell around screens. His block numbers for a guard are really good. He's a great shooter, really good at hit-ahead passes, can be like a secondary playmaker for you, and the question really is even if as a perimeter defender he has done a lot of really good stuff in college already, given his size, what will that look like in the NBA? But for a Houston team, if they end up going that route, you could have him play with Amen. I think that works fine because of how good of a shooter Shepherd is. You could have him play with Fred, and it's a similar thing. Now, do you risk potentially being a little small? I don't know. I feel like Ime Udoka could figure that out. Houston was a very good defensive team last year, obviously. And again, Shepherd has been a good defender on guards. And then also, I think you could have him play with Jalen Green as well. And of course, anybody who's a good shooter and ball handler fits in beautifully with Şengün. Now we go to the Spurs, and similar to Houston, where there is some trade noise, I do think there's been a little bit of that for San Antonio as well. Some speculation of if they could jump up a little bit more if they're desperate for Reese Shea or Reed Shepherd. But even then, if Houston ends up trading the pick, then maybe Reed Shepherd will fall anyway because there's been some, teams wanting to jump up for Donovan Klingon noise. Not only that with San Antonio, but also the guys that I've seen mocked for them has just changed so much over time. Because a few months ago, it felt like there was a little more of a toe pitch. And I mean, he does project as like a downhill creator who can, draw the defense in, make a bunch of beautiful passes, kickouts to guys and everything. However, he had an ACL injury, but it is a partial tear. It's not a full tear. It's still going to be a rehab process. But he is now dipping into the back half of the lottery, where the highest I've seen is Utah at number 10. The lowest I've seen is Miami at 15. And that feels like a very Miami Heat thing to happen, where it's like, oh, you guys are going to pass on the dude who was showing all those playmaking signs, but then you got scared off because of the injury. Watch what happens when we rehab him back. And so now I've even seen a little bit of Stephon Castle noise for the Spurs, whereas before it felt like he was most mocked to like Charlotte, a couple picks down. Stephon Castle projects as a really good defensive guard/wing. He's 6'6" and he's switchable. His on-ball defense projects really well. Team defense good. He can handle, make plays, and finish. The question with him is the jump shot. Defensively, I mean, a really good perimeter defender with Wemby. I mean, we all know how scary that could be. Wemby by himself is scary on defense. But offensively for the Spurs, I mean, look, if you think Castle's the guy, then you take him. It's just, Castle, Sohan, Trey Jones as well. All three guys who do other things well, no doubt, but how many guys do you want in your rotation who need to get better from three, even if they're good at other things? Now, that said, they've got the 8th pick if they were not going to go with Castle. I mean, Buzelis does get mocked for the Pistons at number 5 a lot. The thing with Buzelis is, like, in the Ignite, he was not good from three. But in his last year of high school, he was good from three. And obviously, that's going to be the swing thing for him because, I mean, his cutting projects well. His team defense and, like, help defense stuff is good and potentially very good. As a ball handler, he's good enough to attack off the catch and everything, and maybe in time he can grow a little bit more there. But the shooting is everything, and for the Pistons at number 5 specifically, they need shooting so bad. I mean, I know it went super under the radar, but Simone Fontecchio showing up there after the deadline and being a legit knockdown shooter at his position was kind of a big deal for them. And if they ended up taking him, and again, like there are some mocks where he's either around the Pistons or he's going to the Pistons. If they take him and the shooting is a little more like that's just going to feel like so bad for them, dude. But if his shooting is closer to what it was in his last year of high school, then if you're the Pistons, that's a home run. But yeah, if the Spurs wanted him, they'd have the opportunity most likely. To talk about Donovan Clingan a little bit more. Really good rim protector. Probably projects more as a drop defender, but has shown some life being able to play higher up on screens as well. He's got a little bit of passing out of the short roll chops. He's a very big dude, 7'2", 7'7" wingspan. The hope is that he's someone who can step in right away to a situation and immediately be good to play, 20-something minutes a night. Kind of similar to like Walker Kessler in his rookie season. Now Kessler had a weird second year. That's like kind of not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is like rim protection is nice. I mean, there's speculation if a team like the Grizzlies will trade up for him. Because, of course, they traded Steven Adams, and so they've got a bit of a void at center. And, yeah, a Donovan Clingan, Jaren Jackson frontcourt. You want to talk about rim protection? We already know what it looked like with Adams and Jaren Jackson. But, of course, you have to see that a guy is ready to go day one, even if Clingan is the type of guy who you project to be ready to go day one more than other types of guys. Interesting thing, though, is that there is a bit of Portland noise with Clingan as well. And, of course, they've got Ayton already, but the Blazers are years away from being a decent team. And while Ayton was better in the later parts of the season, I think it's still fair to question if you really want DeAndre Ayton to build around. So if you think that Clingan can be like a centerpiece of a great defense, then yeah, go for it. At this point, I'm not really going in order of teams anymore. I'm more so just talking about guys. Let's talk about a couple of shooters, Dalton Knecht and Rob Dillingham, two guys who are typically mocked like at the lower end of the lottery. Dalton Knecht is a really good shooter on the wing. He's typically mocked towards the bottom of the lottery because outside of his shot, there's more questions about his defense than others. Like if somebody's just really enamored with his shooting, then perhaps we could see him jump up. Now he does have some juice as well as a finisher. Like he can dunk on guys. But yeah, the shooting's the biggest thing. Rob Dillingham is also in a similar spot where the shooting for him, like the pull-up shooting as a guard, is real. The shiftiness is there. But the thing with him is his size. So this was about a month and a half ago now. 6'1" without shoes, 165 pounds, 6'3" wingspan. Google had him at 175. Point being, he's not very big. Anyway, after that, we just have some interesting names. I mean, you got Cody Williams, who has good size on the wing at about 6'6". He's got an over 7-foot wingspan. He does need to put on some weight, but the length is good. Projects well as a guy who can defend a couple of positions. His handle and his passing, I think, project pretty okay. His shooting might take some time, but it is possible that he, one day, like if the shooting hits like that, he could be a I can do everything well type of guy. Maybe not at like a super high-end level, but like a good player to have. And yes, J-Dub is his brother. Then you got Devin Carter, who is really interesting. I mean, he's 6'3", with a 6'9" wingspan. He's about 195 pounds, so he's a guard, but he's not like a mini guard, if you will. A very tough on-ball defender. Really good off-ball defender as well. Gets in passing lanes. He averages a block a game as a guard. Fights around screens really well. He also averaged 8.5 rebounds a game, which is pretty nutty, and he also had some real improvements from outside this previous season. He can dribble, but he's not like a I'm going to run your offense type of guard. We got Ron Holland, who I feel like there was more excitement about him about a year ago. The Ignite was not a good situation, and it has since been shut down. With Holland, he's an athletic slasher who should be able to finish, make plays in transition. The questions are the jumper, decision-making, playmaking. He plays really hard, sometimes to his detriment, but you do like that energy. And so given his size and athleticism, it wouldn't shock me if he was able to do some things defensively right away, and then in time the rest of his game grows. Next we got Tijan Salon, who feels like one of those guys that I could picture one team just really falling in love with, and then a bunch of other teams being like, well, we don't really know what to do with this guy. 6'9", 6'10" athlete, plays really hard. Will he get there as a shooter? Well, there's already been some signs. It's not like he's a non-shooter. And then you got Zach Edey. I mean, we get it, right? Like, he's a powerhouse. Whether it's setting screens, boxing out, fighting on the boards, sealing guys in the post, backing guys down, drawing fouls, like all that's going to be real for him. It's just a matter of defending in space. And also, if it's like a high-paced game, can he get back and forth all the time? You got Khalil Ware, who could be a lob threat, and he's also shown signs as a shooter. And then shout out Tyler Kolek and Tristan Da Silva. Okay.